Thank you all so much for joining us for our October version of the Outdoor Florida webinar series presented by the Office of Greenways and Trails. We are celebrating Florida Greenways and Trails Month today and this whole month with a spotlight on one of our state's developing regional trails, which is the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. We're joined today by Charles Hines from the Trust for Public Land, who has been leading the charge on this project. And before I introduce Charles and we get into the presentation, I have a couple reminders for today. The webinar is being recorded, so this will be posted on the Florida State Parks YouTube channel in the next few days following the live stream. We are going to have a question and answer portion at the end of the webinar, so go ahead and hold your questions until the end, or you can put them in the chat as we go and we'll read them once we finish up. Secondly, please keep yourself on mute to limit any distractions while our presenter is speaking today. And that's about it. So we're going to go ahead and get started and learn a little bit more about our speaker, Charles Hines. As I mentioned, he is with the Trust for Public Land, and he's been practicing law in Sarasota County since 1990 and has worked extensively with development, commercial property issues, and business law matters. In addition to his legal background, he has owned a regional medical supply company in Southwest Florida and has served on the Sarasota County Commission from 2000 to 2012, twice as its chairman. Charles has also served on the West Coast Inland Navigation District, a 4-county special taxing district, and since 2012 has been an active member of the Florida Association of Counties, serving in various roles such as on the board of directors, on multiple advisory committees as well. He has been in his current role as the Florida Gulf Coast Trail Program Director with the Trust for Public Land since 2022. And he's passionate about building healthier, more equitable communities across the state. He will lead Trust for Public Land's vision to create a 420-mile-long corridor traversing 7 coastal counties from Pinellas to Collier. These spaces will help close the park equity gap and connect more Floridians to the splendor of the outdoors. Thank you so much, Charles, for being here today. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to your presentation. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Let me just pull up your presentation. How does that look?
Looks good.
All right, the floor is now yours.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for taking your time to join and learn more about the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. First, let me say thanks to the Office of Greenways and Trails for doing these webinars and giving us the opportunity to present information and hopefully at the end get some dialogue from you all about what you think and what needs to be done. What was funny is, this is off script already, is when Anna said the length of the trail is 420 miles, I smiled because, the number keeps changing. And through this conversation, hopefully you can understand why. But every time that the map gets updated, there's new segments that get added or gets realigned or a loop is added. So for the first couple of years that I was involved in this, we talked about the trail being 130, 140 miles, but this last map adjustment moved things around a little bit and actually lengthened the trail. And in my opinion, made it a lot better, made it a lot more feasible. And hopefully through this conversation today, you'll understand that our goal and my personal goal is to push people as quickly as possible to get this great trail going, get it connected, and make it a true regional trail. So with that, Anna told you a little bit about my background personally, but all of us on this meeting and whoever will listen to this webinar obviously has a personal passion about trails. And when I started thinking about this, what was my background? And if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. So let me back up a second. So here's what I was saying about the trail and the map and how it can change. I mean, you see the big loops in Manatee County. Obviously, we got a loop that's really not even on this map yet that'll occur over the bays with the completion of the Howard Franklin Bridge. So that number is not even calculated in that. So that's what makes this puzzle of this trail so interesting. Here's the completed puzzle, but the puzzle pieces can move. And that's really what keeps us thinking and looking forward. So now before I go forward, let me go back and go to the next one. And my involvement in trails, as she said, I started practicing law in 1990, became very active with the Venice Chamber of Commerce and also with WCIND, working with them. This is a picture of the Intercoastal Waterway in Venice. And you can see there's a large trail on both sides of this intercoastal. And this is called the Venetian Waterway Trail. And this, for the city of Venice, this was the beginning and the end. This was going to be a nice area to ride a bike, walk along the intercoastal, and it was kind of about the city of Venice. Anna, go ahead, next one. So if you guys ever get down this way, this trail, again, runs right along the intercoastal. It's beautiful. This is showing a park, Shamrock Park, on the east side of the intercoastal. You can see the Gulf on the right. And the trail on the east side ends here. On the west side, it ends down at Casperson's Beach. So beautiful amenity for the city of Venice. We got it going, and that was great. So then next slide. So there's just another picture of it. That's Venice High School and Venice Elementary. So we always talk about trails being used for, people to get to and kids to get to and from school. So this trail, it runs right along there. So next one, please. So everyone said, hey, this trail's great, but wait a minute, can we keep going? And so the idea came to create what's now known in Venice and is part of the Florida Gulf Coast Trail is the Legacy Trail. And this trail goes from that Venetian Waterway Trail in Venice all the way up now to downtown Sarasota. And what this was an abandoned rail corridor that actually used to bring the Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus to Venice to their winter quarters. But when they stopped coming to Venice, that was the last user of this rail corridor. And TPL got involved in, with their expertise and knowledge to acquire this rail corridor and work with Sarasota County to convert it to a trail system. And that's how I came involved in this when I was on the Board of County Commissioners, met the folks from TPL, worked with them, and to acquire the land, but also what TPL brought to the table was the ability to work with us, meaning the county commission, to raise the money to do that. And they helped us run our referendum that raised $65 million to buy this corridor and build it. And it passed with 71% of our residents' support. So this, the final leg of this trail opened in downtown Sarasota in 2022. And it's now about 18 and a half miles. And you can ride, like I said, all the way from downtown Sarasota to downtown Venice. And it's a beautiful ride. And I have some pictures a little bit later if anyone, interested in coming to do it. So TPL, so how am I here and why is TPL still working on the Florida Gulf Coast Trail? Well, initially they started working with the Pinellas Trail, and we all know the success of that. That's been around, I believe, 25 years now, at least, maybe, and everyone sees how great that is. Well, this was the same thing when this Legacy Trail got done. How do we keep going? And what TPL decided was, well, we just don't want to work on the Legacy Trail. Let's work on the Florida Gulf Coast Trail, in that this is a huge regional trail that there's nobody pushing it every day to get it done. And obviously the Office of Greenways and Trails and DEP, they have their first trail, Coast to Coast Trail, and then the next trail. And I think the Gulf Coast Trail was the third one. And we felt, well, how about if we jump in here and see if we can accelerate some some work on this trail. So Anna, next one, please. So why is this important to TPL? And then this isn't an advertisement for TPL, but as a national nonprofit, you know, we have to be respectful to our donors, you know, donations, and show that we're making a difference. So the key to our mission is really connecting everyone to the outdoors. And we really believe trails is one of the best ways to do that. Next one, please. So, you know, why? And it's really in our core values of TPL is that communities that have access really are better communities. They're healthier, they're more resilient, they're more equitable, and trails are open to everybody. And then what's not on there, you also have, as I showed that picture for the schools, you have a whole, you know, new transportation alternative. You also have economic redevelopment that occurs. You've seen that along the Pinellas Trail. You've seen it in all these other trails that we have in the northern part of our state, where little towns didn't, you know, when the trains quit coming, you know, what was their identity? Now they're trail towns. And that is their identity. And, you know, we look at all the benefits that come from that. That's why us at TPL, we're excited to invest our donors' donations into continuing this project. Next one, please. You know, and just a little bit further is that, again, at our core, we believe that, you know, the access to the outdoors is a fundamental need and is truly essential to people's well-being. And on you know, we saw that, you know, in the past with the pandemic, is that, you know, parks that stayed open space that stayed open, really introduced the outdoors to a lot of people. And in all of our communities, I especially saw this when I was on the commission, is people would call me and say, Commissioner, I didn't realize we had this beautiful county park, or I didn't realize the benefits of the Legacy Trail. I'm on it all the time. And how do we make it bigger? How do we go further? And so that's kind of what we're doing. Next one. And so again, just quickly on TPL, we've been doing this since 1972, and we do it all across the country as it's a national nonprofit. Next one. So from y'all that are on here, you know, how do we do this? And I kind of interwove that with a little bit about the Legacy Trail. Is we can work with landowners, and in that case, it was Seminole Gulf Railroad that owned that corridor. We worked with them to get that property under contract, and then ultimately, our takeout partner was Sarasota County. One thing about TPL is, you know, we buy land, but we don't hold land. We always have a partner, whether it's the state, the federal government, Florida, you know, Fish and Wildlife, all different agencies that we work with that will ultimately take the land and manage it and keep it into that public space. So the other thing we talked about, we secure financing. So people listen to this, it may be important in that you have a great park or trail idea, but how do we pay for it? How do we negotiate the deal? And then how do we pay for it? And so having the ability to work with local governments to raise money, it doesn't always have to go through a referendum, in that, you know, you have private foundation money that we can work with. And then also, you know, federal or state grants that we can assist and apply for to help local governments, you know, make these great amenities. Okay, next one, please. So you may say, you know, well, what's the benefit? You know, why TPL? Why can't local government do it? And for somebody that worked in local government as an elected official, the reality is there's a lot of constraints on local government to act quickly, to negotiate privately with landowners because of sunshine laws and open records. Sometimes local governments just don't have the staff to handle these types of things. They're working on paving roads and water and sewer and fire and police. They may not have the expertise when it comes to land issues, real estate issues. They are complex. And then also when you're dealing with large properties, let's say a large ranch, 5,000 acres, 10,000 acres, dealing with families, trying to understand what their priorities are. Why would they want to put land in a conservation easement or potentially convey it to government? There's a lot of tax issues. There's a lot of times family issues. And the reality is local governments, that's just not in their bailiwick. That's not what they do. So we can bundle that all up and present it with our takeout partner, and we get a much better result quicker and benefits for our community. Okay, next one. All right, so now now that you got that history, now back to the main focus of this, the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. So here's our updated current map, and with DEP and getting that approved, I believe it was July or August, after about a year and a half of a lot of public input of where should the trail be, where should it be realigned. And this was important because lines on a map might go, oh, that looks great, but the reality is it's really not feasible because of development that's occurred, road constraints. You don't have land to buy. You couldn't afford to buy the easements, roadways, interstates. So what was really great about this last exercise that we did, and with the MPOs, with local governments, spearheaded by the Office of Greenways and Trails, was really take a deep dive into these segments that you see in the orange and go, can we really do this? Is it possible? And some of them worked. So they just would have remained lines on a map. So we made some good adjustments, made some recommendations. And so here is your map. Now, it's packed, as it says, it's packed with potential. So I appreciate you coming here because you obviously have passion about trails. There's still a lot of work to do to, quote, what we call fill in these gaps in this trail. Next one, Anna. So there's many different reasons why this is important. Obviously, health and safety go up there. Unfortunately, Florida really struggles with accidents and sometimes fatalities with interactions with pedestrians and bicyclists and automobiles. We're a growing state. We know it. We see it every day. It gets more populated, and people want these amenities. And so we really need to advocate and push for making trails a priority, whether it's economic development, whether it's tourism. But the bottom line is it's health and safety for our residents. And that's why it's so important. Next one, please. So what's the current status of the trail? You saw the map, and by being a segmented trail the way it is, nobody's fault, but a lot of these trails that were done, those black lines, were done either by local government or done in conjunction with FDOT and road projects. And so they weren't really thought as, well, here's the next step. We're building north to south or south to north. It wasn't thought that way. And just all of a sudden, here you have like a legacy trail, which is really just an out and back trail in Sarasota County. Now, I'm not trying to belittle that trail because I was involved with it and I love it and I want you all to come see it. But where do I go from here? And that's the goal of all this. And I hope you will join TPL and all of us to kind of keep pushing. It's a silly analogy, but pushing this iceberg. This is complicated. It's expensive, but we need to push every day. And if we do, and keep this trail idea in everybody's mind, whenever a road project is done, a new development comes along, where does the trail fit in on this? So next one. So really this leading into what I just said is, how do we do this? This is the place where we all want to be, is the ribbon cutting. Hey, a new segment's open. Yay. But how do we get there? So this is a picture from an opening of a trailhead in Sarasota. Pompano Trailhead is what it's called. People in the picture are City of Sarasota, Sarasota County representatives, elected and staff, private foundations that all contributed to this trailhead that opened. And I say trailhead, but that's not the whole picture. The Legacy Trail, Florida Gulf Coast Trail, goes right behind where we're standing there. But this was a piece of property, about 5 acres, that Sarasota County had surplused. It had no use for it. It was isolated. It made no sense. What do we do with this? And when the trail came, we said, wait a second. Now all of a sudden, this piece of property has purpose. It's accessible. And what ended up being created, and I apologize, I should have had a picture of the park, is 12 pickleball courts, basketball courts, playgrounds, restrooms, and it connects to thousands of homes right behind where we're all standing. Connects up to 2 schools, and on the other side, it connects up to the Boys and Girls Club, which has a huge after-school program. So all of a sudden, a piece of property that the county was going to get rid of now is very popular and creates connectivity for everyone. And I use this just as an example of how things are more than just a trail, and parks and open space come out of this. Okay, so next one. So I've kind of been pushing on you all here, and I'll push on everybody why I do this is, how do we get to that ribbon cutting? And it really takes leadership. It doesn't have to be elected officials. It can be any one of us, either individually or through like a grassroots friends group that are trail supporters. We need to advocate and look for opportunities. So, you looked at here, and I've kind of mentioned rail corridors and, constrained urban properties that suddenly can be redone. And then the main one, and I mentioned it earlier, and this was really key when the map was redrawn, is we are developing very, very quickly, especially in Southwest Florida. And we need to look ahead of where's that next state road project? Where's that next county road project? Where's that next large development coming? And try to see where the trail could fit in. Why is that important? Well, like I said, land acquisition is difficult. There's not that many rail corridors left like the Legacy Trail to acquire. We are working in one in Lee County, and we're working on one in Manatee County. But other than that, it's going to be working with DOT and developers that sometimes build private roads and turn them over to a county or city to get them to incorporate the trail. And they want it. I can tell you that private developers want to be connected to this trail because it's a massive amenity for their development. It's not enough just to have that internal bike trail in a big, DRI or development of regional impact, or one of these large projects, because it doesn't go anywhere. They want to be able to say, you're hooked up to the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. You can go to Tampa, you can go to Naples, and so they'll work with us, but it's not in their heads yet to keep it as a priority. So I saw several names on here that I recognize, some that I don't, but depending on the industry that you're in, just always ask, well, where does the Florida Gulf Coast Trail fit in this? Or can it fit into this? And suddenly we go from 420 miles, you know what? We add another loop and it's 470 miles. Who cares? As long as it's connected and it provides access to the outdoors. So Eastern Manatee County is huge. Hillsborough County is growing. Charlotte County, if you look at Babcock Ranch, they're not part of this yet. And I say yet because maybe the next map redrawing, they could be. So keep your minds open on that, please. Next one. So what are some of the issues that are preventing this trail from getting connected? Frankly, when I started doing this, this little over a year and a half ago, when I'd walk in and say Florida Gulf Coast Trail, they'd go, "What? Never heard of it." And nothing against DEP and stuff, but when I started searching Florida Gulf Coast Trail on their websites and different things, it really didn't appear, and because it wasn't a priority yet. Well, it needs to be a priority. And one of the things that we noticed is, again, there was very little name recognition of this trail. People knew the Pinellas Trail, people knew the Coast to Coast Trail, people knew the Legacy Trail, but not this one yet. And it just wasn't a regional vision. And so we're working on that. This is obviously a silly picture of me, but at a big bicycle rally in Lakewood Ranch, just trying to get public to acknowledge this overall trail and how they can be involved. How can they become a leader in connecting and filling the gaps in this trail? So as I said earlier, just because you all know this, is, why isn't this easy to do? Well, one of the main things is land costs a lot in Florida. We all know that. So we have to be creative to find ways to do it other than just being able to buy a bunch of land. And that was the creativity, like working with FDOT and private development. Also, local governments. If a hurricane hits the state of Florida, which it seems like it's doing a little too frequently now, local governments struggle with what's their priorities. Obviously, keeping people safe and having a home, electricity and water. So a trail may be a bigger, longer term project than the fires that they have to deal with in local government. And that's why it's important for us to be consistent that this trail is important. It should be a priority because you're talking about health and safety of your residents. And then even not just elected officials, but citizens sometimes don't recognize the benefits of trails. And when you sit down and talk to them and you talk about health and safety and economic redevelopment, tourism, connectivity, then they start to get it. And obviously, Southwest Florida is very popular with people now from the Northeast that are moving here, even from the western part of our country. I never used to ever see a California license plate ever. Now they're pretty common. Those states, I would say, are ahead of the state of Florida when it comes to trail systems. And so when people move here, they love our weather and they love our tax benefits and different things like that, but they want their trails. And so I get asked all the time, where are the trails? And I said, well, I need your help. I need you to help me connect and fill in these gaps. And suddenly you'll have a beautiful coast to coast trail. You have a coast coming one down the eastern part of Florida. You can do the Florida Keys. You can do North Florida. And now let's do Southwest Florida and go, connect all up Tampa, St. Pete, all the way down to Naples. So next one. So name recognition. So in conjunction with the Office of Greenways and Trails, TPL has sponsored a logo contest because you got to brand it. We got to brand this trail. And what you're looking at here are, after hundreds and hundreds of submissions, this was a juried review. These are your top 5. It is now open to the public vote until the end of this month. So we did it with the Trails Month. And so, you can cast your vote. There's the website. If you don't have time to write that down, just type in Google TPL logo contest and TPL logo contest in Google, and you'll get to this. And pick your favorite one. And the winner gets $5,000. I have no idea who these 5 people are that have submitted these 5, but it'll be exciting, and hopefully we'll get a lot of press out of this. And then you'll start seeing T-shirts and hats, and when we talk about the Florida Gulf Coast Trail, it'll have an identity. And so again, please submit your vote. It's going on now, and it couldn't be any simpler to do. You click a couple buttons. Okay, next one. So I'm preaching here a little bit, but I'm excited. I'm passionate about getting this done. And so together, let's really work on completing this trail. When you see your state representatives, they're going to go in legislative session early this year. And I know a lot of local governments have put in appropriations for trails. Last year, the state legislature put millions of dollars into the Sun Trail program. So that's this leadership that I'm looking for all of us to say to your elected officials, federal, state, and local, support trails. They're important to us. We're your constituents. This is an amenity that is more than an amenity. It's an infrastructure. It's an investment into our community, and we want you to support that. Okay, next one. So these are some pictures that I would hope get everyone excited. These are the feel good. These are some completed segments that if you're in a community that has one of the orange lines, this is what could be brought to your community with some completed trails. So again, this one goes right through a state park in Osprey, Florida. This was one that we actually kept a segment of the old rail corridor just for history and nostalgic reasons, and it looks really good. And so that's a nice one. Next one. Again, a beautiful, when you talk about investments in your community, this is a bridge over US 41 in Venice. Beautiful architecture. Venice has a Venetian type theme for the city, and so that was adopted into this bridge. And people walk it all the time, bike it all the time. You see high school kids up there running sprints up and down for workouts, for cross country and everything else. So beautiful amenity there in Venice. Next one. Again, access to water, the outside. This was the old train trestle over this bay, Roberts Bay. But again, these outcroppings or these outtakes on the side, people fish there all the time, and or just go and watch the sunset. And so again, a beautiful amenity. You can see the boats going by and kayakers and so forth. So that's a nice one too. Next one. Ringling Bridge in Sarasota. Again, there's your separated trail. People bike it, run it, walk it. You couldn't ask for a more beautiful way to spend an evening or an early morning walking across that bridge, connecting up downtown Sarasota to St. Armand's Circle and Longboat Key. The one I'll add to the benefits of trail is just joy. A nice way to spend a good, healthy day, going for a walk, going to a restaurant, just enjoying the outdoors. Okay, so next one. This is one last one. This is down in Northport. Again, if you want an urban setting, you go to Ringling. If you want a more rural or type of privacy or quiet, you have these types of places to go on the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. And so hopefully we can bring this to all of Southwest Florida. So next one. So as Anna said, I hope you guys have some questions or at least some comments or ideas and a willingness to jump on board of being an advocate and a leader for the Florida Gulf Coast Trail.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Charles, for all that great information. I'm sure we're going to have a couple questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and let me just get us spotlighted here for our Q&A. All right, perfect. So if anyone has a question, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat. And as we're getting our questions together, we do have a couple here to start with. Of course, the Office of Greenways and Trails has some information about the the Florida Gulf Coast Trail on our website. But Charles, what are the best ways for people to stay up to date with the work on the trail? Is there any sort of TPL resources where people can check out to see, what's already built or to look at those maps that you had?
Yeah, so you can just go to tpl.org and we have information on there. Really, a lot of people are doing a good job. Friends of the Legacy Trail do that in regards to Sarasota County. That is one thing, again, as I said, about building the recognition of this trail. One thing that TPL is looking to do is to build on our webpage, our website, more of a, not a day-to-day update, but at least a quarterly update, especially if a new segment gets open or an important vote that could come up for this, so that people can get information. Obviously, anyone can call me or email me, and I'm happy to give them the latest maps. We are constantly updating maps with different ideas and thoughts, and to promote these. So that's something we hope in the next couple of years, is that we have a coalition of, again, this traverses 7 counties. But if we could build a coalition, maybe you meet virtually a couple times a year, maybe once individually, and together once a year, to talk about these things and create a website that is purely for the Florida Gulf Coast Trail, where people can go right to it and learn everything that's going on. So that's something us as an organization are looking into sponsoring and funding.
Awesome. Thanks for that. We have a couple other questions here. Is part of the plan to have those loops along the trail? It seemed like that was indicated in some of the maps. Do you plan to have those in the final trail project?
Yeah, so the map that you saw is the current map approved by the state, by the Office of Greenways and Trails. And so that map's important, because then that qualifies that segment for Sun Trail funding. Now, what's good to know is that it's a vision. If someone has a better idea, and these maps get updated, I believe, every 5 years, maybe we add another loop. And that was the example that I was talking about. And so, but that takes public support and a lot of public workshops to see if that trail loop should be added. And that's how Manatee County got that loop. Was, I don't think the original maps had it, but they felt, because of where their current population is by the Gulf, and where their future population is coming, which is further east, that they needed that loop. Plus, it's a nice natural loop, like the one that's going to occur in Tampa, from Tampa to St. Pete, with the bridge reconstructions. Absolutely.
Thank you. How is the wildlife protected through the process of building a trail? And is the entire 420-mile length intended to be asphalt, or is there a possibility to leave part of it as dirt or grass?
Good question. And, that's where I think I saw someone talk about the wildlife corridor. So it kind of depends. There are areas that we negotiate for property that involves the trail, but can also involve land conservation. And that occurred with the city of Sarasota and the redoing of their golf course. They took a golf course that had 36 holes, took it down to 18, and took a big chunk of that property and put it in a conservation easement for stormwater, birds, all of that. And that'll be a nice walking trail, but the Florida Gulf Coast Trail will go right through there. So, the urban areas, what you see is like that one that I showed you about the Pompano Trail, is you might have an acre, 5 acres, 10 acres that is kind of not doing anything or needs to be redeveloped. the trail goes through, and all of a sudden, everyone has ideas on how it could be done. In the rural areas, you can combine the trail and potentially have a lot more conservation, set aside land, but access it like I showed through the Oscar Shear State Park, where the trail comes through there. But that park there is no development in that park. That is all protected in a beautiful area. As to the surface, for Sun Trail, they like to see asphalt or concrete. So some consistency, so you're not riding a bike and suddenly you're on an asphalt trail and then now you're on a dirt trail. Those type of trails can be part of the system, but those are more not really what the Florida Gulf Coast Trail is trying to accomplish. Those would be opportunity trails that would loop off of it. So that's kind of where that stands, is in my understanding.
Gotcha. Thank you. In urban areas, have there been opportunities to overlap complete streets funding with trail connections?
Thank you. Yes, because one of the things about trails is in an urban area, there's stuff already there. There's buildings, there's roads, and you just can't plop in a 12-foot, 14-foot wide trail sometimes. And the best example just occurred earlier this year in downtown Sarasota. Is they created a complete street project. They took a 4-lane road, took it to 2, and created a complete street on both sides of that to connect where the Legacy Trail ends right now to downtown Sarasota. And so that's where I talk about these puzzle pieces and moving these puzzle pieces. Sometimes you just have to be creative and say, the best that we can do is a complete street project to connect up this segment to that segment. And that exists in little pieces on the Pinellas Trail, where sometimes you have to hop off and you're in an area, but then you get back on the separated trail where the rail corridor was. That's just reality. And it takes a lot of courage by local government to do a road diet or to find space to do a complete street type of thing. The good news is what we're seeing now is, I think, a change of mind with FDOT and the benefits of maybe not creating some of these bike lanes that we see in old design of roads, putting bikes and cars right next to each other, which, it's not the best thing. But if you look at that, that's a lot of space. And if you move that space away from the road and put it over where you're building the 6-foot sidewalk, well, expand the sidewalk, make this 14 feet wide, and potentially get rid of that, dangerous interaction between bikes and mainly bikes and cars. And so we're evolving. And I say that even with DOT, they have their standards and they look at certain things. But if the community says, we need this, then those things can happen.
Great. Good answer. Thank you. There's a question here about, does TPL plan to educate the people and the trail users about maintaining the health and wellness of the trail and the health and wellness of the land specifically, says the question. Would that be TPL, or would that be more the people that own specific segments of the trail, those trail managers?
Well, it's funny. We would be part of it because that's where I talked about our takeout partner. So once a county or a city takes over this, there is maintenance and responsibility of it. It's, oh, hey, great, we did the ribbon cutting. Yeah, but it needs to be resurfaced. Grass needs to be mowed. Trees needs to be trimmed. And so normally what really the best thing that we can have is a trail support group that kind of adopts that trail or that segment in their community. And we've seen this with the Friends of the Legacy Trail. They'll do fundraisers, they sell t-shirts, they do bike rallies, and the money that they raise, they donate back to Sarasota County to do those extra amenities and to do additional upkeep. So from an educational standpoint, it's maintenance of a county park and amenity, and it needs to be budgeted and understood that there's ongoing cost. So I mentioned some upgrades to areas. One thing that we're working with some private foundations in regards to resiliency and climate change is planting trees. So when we are able to get a rail corridor or do certain things, there are opportunities along these trails to do enhancement, plant trees, do stormwater. I mentioned that one earlier with Bobby Jones, to fix some of the things that maybe we had problems with the 50s, 60s, 70s of the way we did stormwater runoff. And plant some additional trees. I mean, the pictures here on the back of our background here, Florida's hot, and it's nice when you walk in the shade, though. And so those are some of the things that we can do, and TPL will continue to advocate for, even once the trail's done.
Great, thank you so much. The next question, a little more specific, are you considering collaboration with the Florida Native Plant Society to assist in education efforts utilizing the trail as a tremendous community outreach for biodiversity?
Happy to. Have not yet, to my knowledge, but again, this is a public park, and you see all kinds of different types of plantings, butterfly gardens, non-invasive species, get rid of invasive species and put in what should be here. And so that knowledge and expertise and that partnership and collaboration that I talked about is really what we need to have everybody buy into the trail. But the trail is more than a trail, and it can offer all these opportunities for other groups and people that have passion about certain things to get involved, because it's a public amenity.
Awesome. And I assume anyone from the webinar who has a partnership idea would be able to reach out to you via email to discuss that?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Great. We had a comment from Lauren Cruz with DEP, one of our colleagues, pointing out some land and recreation grant application cycles. I'm sure you might be aware of those. There's a link there in the comments. Also, anyone else who's watching might be interested in those grant opportunities available through spring 2024. Let's see, I think we have time for just about one more question here. And I might know the answer to this knowing TPL's work, but when landscaping this trail and sections of the trail, is TPL planning to support native wildlife? And do you think they would plan to use native plants and trees in those efforts?
Oh, absolutely. Now, again, it depends on where the trail is. If it's in an urban area, you have different type of wildlife than you do. Like I said, you have a butterfly garden. That's great. I doubt we're going to have Florida panthers in downtown St. Pete. But as we look at different opportunities to protect land, the Florida wildlife and the Florida Wildlife Corridor and different things, getting a little further east. But the idea is, from our organization, the way that people learn to respect and love the outdoors and take care of the outdoors, they need to get into the outdoors, and they need to have access. And trails is a great way to do it, whether you're walking, biking, jogging, however. You don't have to ride 150 miles to enjoy it. So the answer is yes on that, but it kind of depends on where the trail goes. And that might be the next time we do these map updates, we see a little more trail opportunities, a little more east. But we have so many urban areas that really are underserved in regards to open space and amenities. And if we can come in and bring a trail through there, and then parks open up because of that, playgrounds, like the one, and I apologize, I should have had one more slide, is once the Legacy Trail came through, all of a sudden, all these neighborhoods have access to it. And all a county or city needs is a couple acres, and you can create a beautiful playground. And gives people the opportunity to go there and do that. And so we're hoping to do a few more in our urbanized areas to connect up parks where you just don't always have to jump in a car and go somewhere. If you don't own a car or if it's not affordable, all of a sudden now a bicycle becomes a real transportation alternative.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so going back to the question, it just kind of depends on where the trail is and
Right.
what opportunities there are to connect with wildlife there, considering the condition the land is already in and the surrounding environment. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up our questions. Thank you all so much who have joined us today and have given your input. And like I said, I'll have Charles's contact information that was on that last slide when I send out the follow-up email today if anyone has further partnership ideas that they want to discuss. Thank you again, Charles, for speaking and all the great information that you were able to share. I'll be sending out a survey like I normally do. If you have any suggestions for future webinar topics, feel free to respond to that survey and let us know. And if you have not already subscribed to our Outdoor Florida webinar series, you can do so on the Office of Greenways and Trails website, which is floridadep.gov/OGT. Next month, we'll be talking about accessible and adaptive paddling during Florida Paddle Sports Month. So any questions or feedback can be emailed to us at Office of Greenways and Trails at floridadep.gov.